Most people think life becomes easier when circumstances finally change, when the right opportunity arrives, when difficult people disappear, when money becomes less stressful, when the future feels more certain, when the pain from the past finally fades away. But if you've lived long enough, you've probably discovered something uncomfortable. That day rarely comes. Every problem you solve seems to introduce another one. Every goal you reach creates a new expectation. Every moment of peace feels temporary, so you work harder, you plan more carefully, you try to control more people, more situations, and more outcomes. Yet somehow, life still feels heavy. Not because you are weak, not because you are incapable, but because you may be carrying a burden that was never yours to carry. The Stoics understood this more than 2,000 years ago. They did not promise a life without hardship. They did not teach secret techniques for avoiding pain. Instead, they revealed something far more powerful. Life becomes lighter the moment you stop fighting battles that only exist inside your own mind. Think about how much energy disappears every single day. You replay conversations that ended yesterday. You worry about problems that have not happened yet. You hope people will become someone they have never shown themselves to be. You wait for life to become fair before allowing yourself to feel at peace. Without realizing it, you spend more time resisting reality than actually living it. And resistance is exhausting. Imagine walking through a long journey while carrying a backpack filled with heavy stones. Every step feels harder than it should. You assume life itself is difficult. Then one day you stop, open the backpack, and discover that many of those stones never belonged there. Nothing about the road has changed, yet every step suddenly feels lighter. That is exactly what Stoicism offers. Not a different road, a lighter way of walking it. In this video, you will discover 7 timeless Stoic truths that quietly remove the unnecessary weight most people carry every day. Each truth builds upon the last. Together, they will help you stop wasting energy on what you cannot control and start directing that energy toward the only place where real freedom has ever existed, your own mind. Because your life does not become easier when the world finally changes. It becomes easier when you do. And the first step begins by letting go of one expectation that has been making life harder than it needs to be. More than 2,000 years ago, the Stoics reached a conclusion that still challenges the modern world. Human suffering is rarely created by reality alone. It is created by the stories we tell ourselves about reality. Epictetus was born a slave, yet he taught that no one could truly imprison a person who had learned to govern his own mind. Seneca possessed extraordinary wealth, but he repeatedly warned that comfort and possessions become dangerous the moment we depend on them for peace. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire of his age while facing war, betrayal, plague, and uncertainty. Yet he reminded himself every day that a calm mind is built from disciplined judgment, not favorable circumstances. 3 men, 3 completely different lives. One shared discovery. Your experience of life depends less on what happens to you than on how you choose to meet what happens. That is why Stoicism has never belonged only to ancient Rome. Empires have disappeared. Governments have changed. Technology has transformed the world beyond recognition. Human nature has not. People still fear rejection. They still chase approval. They still argue with the past. They still worry about futures that may never arrive. And they still hand their peace to people and circumstances they cannot control. The 7 truths you are about to learn have survived for centuries because they speak directly to these timeless struggles. They are not abstract philosophy. They are practical disciplines. They have guided emperors, soldiers, merchants, teachers, and ordinary men and women through hardship, uncertainty, loss, and success. They continue to endure because they ask a question that never grows old. If life cannot always be controlled, how should I choose to live? Everything that follows is an answer to that question. Over the next few minutes, you are not simply going to learn 7 Stoic ideas. You are going to experience 7 shifts in perspective. Each truth removes one unnecessary burden that most people unknowingly carry throughout their lives. The first frees you from expecting life to be fair. The next returns control to your own mind instead of other people's behavior. Another teaches you to stop feeding thoughts that should have ended long ago. One challenges the comfort that quietly limits your potential. Another helps you recover the present moment you have been too distracted to notice. One shows you how to let people leave without losing yourself. And the final truth brings all the others together by revealing where lasting peace has always been waiting. Do not rush through these lessons. Some may challenge beliefs you have carried for years. Others may explain struggles you have never been able to put into words. Listen carefully, reflect honestly, and more importantly, notice which truth makes you feel uncomfortable. That is often the one with the greatest power to change your life. If you're committed to building a calmer, stronger, and wiser mind through timeless Stoic wisdom, subscribe and continue this journey with us. Now, let's begin with the first truth. The moment you stop expecting life to follow your script, life begins to feel much lighter. Truth 1. Stop expecting life to be fair. Most disappointment begins long before anything actually goes wrong. It begins with an expectation. You expect kindness to be returned. You expect honesty to be rewarded. You expect hard work to produce immediate results. You expect loyal people to remain loyal forever. Without realizing it, you write a script for how life should unfold. Then reality quietly ignores it. The painful part is rarely the event itself. The painful part is discovering that life never agreed to follow the story you created inside your mind. Imagine two people losing the same job on the same day. The first spends weeks repeating the same question. Why did this happen to me? He blames the economy, his employer, bad luck, and everyone around him. Every conversation becomes another opportunity to relive the injustice. Even when a new opportunity appears, he is too busy arguing with the past to recognize it. The second person feels the same disappointment. He also experiences uncertainty. He also worries about the future. But after allowing himself a moment to feel the loss, he asks a different question. What can I do now? He updates his skills. He reaches out to former colleagues. He applies for opportunities he would never have considered before. 6 months later, both men have lived through the same event. One remains trapped in resentment. The other has already begun building a different future. The difference was never luck. It was expectation. Arguing with reality is like standing in the middle of a powerful river, pushing against the current with your bare hands. The river is not trying to defeat you. It is simply flowing according to its nature. The harder you resist it, the more exhausted you become. Life works the same way. Reality does not organize itself around your preferences. It moves according to causes, consequences, chance, and the choices of billions of other people. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. As emperor, he woke each morning knowing that he would face criticism, selfishness, dishonesty, and disappointment. Instead of hoping people would become different, he prepared his own mind to meet them wisely. That simple habit protected his peace far more effectively than wishful thinking ever could. History remembers him for his power. Stoicism remembers him for his acceptance. Acceptance is often misunderstood. It is not giving up. It is not pretending that injustice is acceptable. It is choosing to stop fighting facts that already exist. The energy you save through acceptance becomes the energy you can invest in meaningful action. The next time life feels unfair, pause before asking, "Why is this happening to me?" Ask instead, "What does this moment require from me?" That single question changes your role completely. You stop seeing yourself as the victim of circumstances. You begin acting like the author of your response. And once you stop demanding that reality become different before you can find peace, another struggle becomes impossible to ignore. You realize that much of your suffering has never come from life itself. It has come from trying to control people who were never yours to control. Truth 2. Control your reactions, not other people. Once you stop expecting life to be fair, another illusion quietly comes into view. You begin believing that your peace depends on other people's behavior. If only they understood you, if only they appreciated your efforts, if only they apologized, if only they changed. You tell yourself that once they become different, your life will finally become easier. But there is a hidden cost to this way of thinking. Every time your emotional state depends on another person's choices, you hand them a piece of your freedom. Most people never notice this exchange. They spend years trying to manage the emotions, opinions, and decisions of everyone around them. Parents try to control their children. Children try to change their parents. Couples try to reshape one another. Friends become disappointed because someone failed to meet an expectation that was never spoken aloud. The result is always the same: frustration. Imagine a man driving home after work. Another driver suddenly cuts him off in traffic. Within seconds, anger takes over. For the next hour, he replays the moment in his mind. By the time he reaches home, he is impatient with his family, distracted during dinner, and unable to enjoy the rest of his evening. The other driver affected his life for only 3 seconds. He allowed the event to control him for 3 hours. Now imagine another person in exactly the same situation. He notices the irritation. He takes one slow breath. He reminds himself, I cannot control his decision. I can control mine. 10 seconds later, his attention returns to the road. The event is identical. The experience is completely different. That difference is where freedom begins. Trying to control another person's mind is like trying to command the wind. You may shout at it, argue with it, even curse it. The wind continues blowing exactly as it chooses. People are no different. They act according to their experiences, fears, desires, beliefs, and level of wisdom, not yours. Epictetus built his entire philosophy upon one simple distinction. Some things belong to you, some things never will. Your judgments, your choices, your actions, these are yours. Another person's opinions, emotions, and decisions are not. Confusing those two categories creates endless suffering. History gives us a powerful example. As emperor, Marcus Aurelius faced constant criticism from political rivals, dishonest officials, and ambitious generals. He could not force them to become honorable. He could only decide whether he himself would remain honorable. That quiet discipline allowed him to govern an empire without allowing the empire to govern his mind. The next time someone disappoints you, pause before asking, "How do I make them understand me?" Ask instead, "How do I want to respond?" That question immediately returns your attention to the one place where real influence has always existed, your own character. Slowly, you stop becoming someone who reacts to every person you meet. You become someone who responds according to your own values. And when that transformation begins, you discover another source of unnecessary suffering. The problem is no longer other people. It is the thoughts you continue feeding long after the moment has already passed. Truth 3. Most problems exist only because you keep feeding them. By now, something important has begun to change. You no longer expect life to obey your plans. You no longer expect other people to carry responsibility for your peace. Yet many people discover that even after learning these two lessons, they still feel trapped. Why? Because the greatest battle is no longer happening around them. It is happening inside their own mind. The event is over. The conversation has ended. The mistake has already been made. The rejection belongs to yesterday. Yet the mind refuses to let any of it stay in the past. Instead, it keeps reopening old wounds. It replays the same conversation. It rewrites the same argument. It imagines better answers. It invents different endings. Without realizing it, you become both the prisoner and the prison guard of your own thinking. Imagine placing one small piece of wood into a fire. Left alone, the flames gradually lose their strength. Eventually, they disappear. Now imagine adding another piece every few minutes. The fire never has the opportunity to die. It grows larger, hotter, more destructive. This is exactly how attention works. Every time you replay an insult, relive an embarrassing moment, or imagine another version of the past, you quietly add another piece of wood to a fire that reality had already begun to extinguish. The event is no longer creating your suffering. Your attention is. That is why two people can experience the same disappointment and recover at completely different speeds. One carries it for years, the other carries it only long enough to learn from it. The difference is not emotional strength, it is emotional discipline. Seneca understood this with remarkable clarity. He wrote that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Most people hear those words and think only about worrying over the future, but they are equally true of the past. The mind creates fresh pain every time it refuses to release a finished event. History gives us another example. Cato the Younger endured repeated political defeats while defending the principles he believed in. He lost battles, he watched powerful opponents gain influence. He experienced setbacks that would have consumed many people with bitterness. Yet he refused to spend his life arguing with what had already happened. Each defeat became information, not identity. Each setback became another opportunity to act according to virtue rather than emotion. That quiet discipline made him stronger than many men who appeared far more successful. The Stoics never asked you to erase painful memories. They asked you to stop feeding them. There is an important difference. A memory may return. You cannot always control that, but you can decide whether you will build a home for it inside your mind. The next time an old mistake appears, simply notice it. Do not fight it. Do not follow it. Acknowledge it. Then gently return your attention to the present moment. Each time you do this, you weaken an old habit and strengthen a new one. Eventually, the mind learns that not every thought deserves your attention. If you're choosing that kind of freedom, leave "I let it go" in the comments. One small commitment, repeated often enough, becomes part of your character. Soon, letting go stops feeling like something you do. It becomes someone you are. And once you stop feeding yesterday's pain, another hidden obstacle begins to reveal itself. Sometimes the greatest burden in your life is not suffering. It is the comfort that quietly keeps you exactly where you are. Truth 4. Comfort is often the quietest form of captivity. Pain usually announces itself. Comfort rarely does. That is why comfort can become far more dangerous. Not because rest is wrong, not because peace is something to avoid, but because comfort has a subtle way of convincing you that staying the same is safer than growing. It whispers instead of shouting. You can start tomorrow. One more day won't matter. You're fine exactly where you are. Little by little, those whispers become your normal way of thinking. Months pass, then years. One day you wake up and realize your life has not been destroyed by failure. It has been quietly reduced by hesitation. Imagine a bird that has lived inside a cage for many years. The door is finally opened. Freedom is only a few inches away, yet the bird remains inside. Not because it cannot fly, because the cage has become familiar. The unknown feels more frightening than the prison it already understands. Many people live exactly this way. They stay in relationships that no longer help them grow. They remain in jobs they stopped loving years ago. They postpone meaningful conversations. They delay learning new skills. They wait for confidence before taking action. But confidence rarely comes first. Action does. Every meaningful change in life begins with discomfort. The first workout feels difficult. The first honest conversation feels awkward. The first attempt at a new career feels uncertain. The first step toward forgiveness feels unnatural. Growth almost always asks you to exchange temporary comfort for lasting strength. Musonius Rufus believed that difficulty was not an obstacle to virtue. It was one of its greatest teachers. He encouraged his students to willingly accept hardship, not because suffering was noble by itself, but because choosing difficult things strengthened character in ways that comfort never could. History repeatedly proved him right. When he was exiled by political authorities, he lost status, security, and influence. Yet exile did not weaken his philosophy. It revealed it. Even far from Rome, he continued teaching anyone willing to listen. His circumstances changed. His principles did not. That is the difference between a person who depends on comfort and one who depends on character. Ask yourself a simple question. What have you been postponing, not because you are incapable, but because you are uncomfortable? The answer is often standing at the entrance to your next stage of growth. You do not need to transform your entire life overnight. Take one difficult step. Make one honest decision, keep one promise to yourself, then repeat it tomorrow. Discomfort gradually stops feeling like a threat. It becomes evidence that you are moving instead of standing still. Eventually, you stop chasing the easiest path. You begin trusting the meaningful one. And that shift changes something even deeper. Because when you become willing to leave the comfort of yesterday, you finally become capable of noticing the only place where life has ever truly existed, the present moment. Truth 5. Your life is happening now, not in your thoughts. After leaving the comfort of the familiar, you begin to notice something surprising. Most of your life has never been lived in the present. Your body may be here. Your mind often is not. It wanders toward yesterday. It rushes into tomorrow. It imagines conversations that have not happened. It rehearses problems that may never arrive. Then it wonders why peace always feels out of reach. The tragedy is not that the mind travels. The tragedy is that it forgets to come home. Imagine standing beside a quiet lake at sunrise. The water is perfectly still. For a brief moment, the entire sky is reflected on its surface. Now throw a handful of stones into the lake. The reflection immediately disappears. The sky has not changed, only the surface has. Your mind works in much the same way. Reality is often calmer than your thoughts about reality. When your attention is constantly disturbed by fear, regret, comparison, or endless planning, you lose the ability to see clearly what is actually in front of you. Many people believe they are exhausted because life demands too much. Sometimes they are exhausted because their attention never rests. Think about an ordinary evening. You sit down to have dinner with your family. Your phone vibrates. A work email appears. You remember something embarrassing that happened years ago. Then you begin worrying about next week's responsibilities. The meal ends. You barely remember tasting it. Nothing terrible happened, yet you were absent from your own life. Multiply moments like that across months and years, and an entire lifetime can quietly disappear without ever being fully experienced. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to confine his attention to the present task, not because the future was unimportant, but because the present was the only place where wise action was possible. He understood that tomorrow is shaped by what you do today, not by how long you worry about tomorrow. History offers another quiet example. During his years of exile, Epictetus could have spent his days grieving everything he had lost. Instead, he focused on the students sitting directly in front of him. He taught one conversation at a time, one lesson at a time, one person at a time. That simple discipline allowed his influence to reach across centuries. He changed the future by remaining fully present in the moment he actually possessed. Presence is not something mysterious. It is simply the decision to give your full attention to what deserves it now. When you are working, work. When you are listening, truly listen. When you are resting, allow yourself to rest without guilt. Your mind will wander. That is human. Your practice is gently bringing it back, again and again. Over time, you begin to notice something remarkable. Life has been offering moments of peace all along. You were simply too distracted to receive them. The more fully you inhabit the present, the less power fear has over your future and regret has over your past. And once you learn to stay present, another difficult lesson naturally follows. Not everyone who walks beside you is meant to remain there forever. Truth 6. Let people leave without losing yourself. One of the hardest lessons in life has nothing to do with failure. It has everything to do with change. People change, friendships change, relationships change. Even the people who once promised to stay forever sometimes choose a different path. Most of our suffering begins when we mistake change for betrayal. We hold tighter. We explain ourselves again and again. We chase closure that never arrives. We keep asking questions that no one can answer. Why did they change? What did I do wrong? How can I make them come back? Each question quietly ties another knot around our own peace. Imagine holding a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. But when your hand remains open, the sand rests there naturally for as long as it can. People are often like that. Some are meant to stay for years. others for only a season. Trying to force permanence onto what was always temporary only creates unnecessary pain. Think about someone who has built their identity around a relationship. When that relationship ends, they do not simply lose another person. They feel as though they have lost themselves. Every memory becomes a reminder. Every familiar place becomes an emotional trap. Months pass, yet life seems unable to move forward because their identity is still anchored to someone who has already left. Now imagine another person facing the same loss. They grieve honestly. They acknowledge the sadness instead of pretending it does not exist. But little by little, they return to the habits that define their own character. They continue learning. They continue serving others. They continue building a meaningful life. They remember the relationship with gratitude rather than dependence. The loss remains real, but it no longer controls the direction of their future. That is emotional freedom. Seneca once observed that everything we love is entrusted to us, not permanently given to us. Nothing in life arrives with a guarantee, not wealth, not health, not reputation, not even the people closest to us. Understanding this does not make love weaker, it makes gratitude stronger. History illustrates this beautifully. When Marcus Aurelius lost several of his children, a grief almost impossible to imagine, he did not deny his sorrow. He mourned deeply. Yet he continued fulfilling his responsibilities as a father, a leader, and a philosopher. He refused to allow loss to destroy the virtues that gave his life meaning. His love remained. So did his purpose. That is the balance Stoicism teaches. Love people fully. Cling to no one. Allow others the freedom to become who they choose to become, and give yourself that same freedom. When someone leaves, let your character remain, because your identity was never supposed to depend on another person's presence. If that is a lesson you are choosing to live by, write, "I release what I can't keep," in the comments. Not as a promise to anyone else, as a promise to yourself. The strongest people are not those who never lose anyone. They are the ones who refuse to lose themselves when someone else walks away. And when you finally stop fearing who may leave your life, one final truth quietly emerges. The peace you have been searching for has never been waiting somewhere else. It has always been waiting inside the way you choose to live. Truth 7. Peace is not something you find, it is something you practice. After everything we have explored, one final question remains. Where does lasting peace actually come from? Most people spend their lives searching for it in the next achievement, the next relationship, the next promotion, the next house, the next stage of life. They believe peace is waiting just beyond the next milestone. But every milestone eventually becomes ordinary. Another desire appears. Another goal replaces the last one. The chase begins again. This is why so many successful people remain restless. They achieved what they once believed would finally satisfy them, yet their inner world never changed. The Stoics understood that peace cannot be collected like possessions. It is built through repeated choices. Imagine a lighthouse standing on a rocky coastline. Storms arrive without warning. The waves crash against the cliffs. The wind howls through the night. Ships struggle to stay on course. Yet the lighthouse does not argue with the storm. It does not ask the sea to become calmer. It simply continues shining. Its purpose remains unchanged even when everything around it becomes chaotic. Your character can become that lighthouse. Not because life grows easier, but because your principles become steadier. Look back at the 7 truths. You stopped demanding that life be fair. You stopped trying to control other people. You stopped feeding unnecessary thoughts. You became willing to leave the comfort that kept you small. You learned to return your attention to the present moment. You allowed people to leave without abandoning yourself. None of these truths changed the outside world. They changed the person meeting the outside world. That is where peace has always begun. Epictetus taught that no one is free who is not master of himself. Those words summarize every lesson we have explored today. Freedom is not found in perfect circumstances. It is found in disciplined choices repeated every day. History gives us one final reminder. Marcus Aurelius spent his final years surrounded by war, disease, political uncertainty, and constant responsibility. Few people would describe his circumstances as peaceful, yet generation after generation continues reading his private reflections because they reveal a man who understood something timeless. Inner stability does not depend upon external stability. It depends upon daily practice. So begin where you are. Do not wait for a quieter life. Practice patience during today's frustration. Practice courage during today's uncertainty. Practice gratitude before today's ordinary moments disappear. Practice self-control during today's temptation. These small decisions rarely feel dramatic, but over months and years, they quietly become your character, and your character becomes your destiny. The greatest transformation rarely arrives in one extraordinary moment. It is built through thousands of ordinary choices that no one else will ever see. One day, you look back and realize something remarkable. The world did not become easier. You became stronger. Life did not become more predictable. You became more peaceful. The storms never stopped. You simply learned how to stand within them. If there is one lesson to carry with you after today's journey, let it be this. Life becomes lighter the moment you stop fighting what you cannot control and start governing what you can. Everything we explored today points back to that single truth. You do not need a fairer world to find peace. You do not need everyone to understand you. You do not need to erase every painful memory, predict every future challenge, or hold on to every person who enters your life. You only need the courage to return, again and again, to the one thing that has always belonged to you: your own character. That is the quiet promise of Stoicism. Not that life will become easier overnight, but that you will become steadier, wiser, and stronger with every deliberate choice you make. Some days you will remember these principles easily, other days you will forget them. Old habits will return, emotions will feel overwhelming. That is not failure. It is simply another opportunity to practice. The Stoics never believed that wisdom was achieved in a single moment. They believed it was built through daily repetition. One calm response, one honest decision, one unnecessary worry released, one act of courage repeated often enough to become part of who you are. So don't try to master all 7 truths tomorrow. Choose one. Live with it this week. Allow it to shape the way you think, speak, and respond. Then return for the next one. Small changes, practiced consistently, eventually transform an entire life. If this video gave you a new way to look at your own life, subscribe and join us for more timeless Stoic wisdom that helps you build lasting inner strength, emotional clarity, and genuine peace. And before you leave, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these 7 Stoic truths spoke to you the most? Share it in the comments and tell us which one you will begin practicing today. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, take care of your mind. Because when you govern your mind, you no longer wait for life to become easier. You become the kind of person who can walk through any season with wisdom, resilience, and peace.